بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر وما أدراك ما ليلة القدر ليلة القدر خير من ألف شهر تنزل الملائكة والروح فيها بإذن ربهم من كل أمر سلام هي حتى مطلع الفجر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى أرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني سلام الله أبدا ما بغيت وبغي الليل والنهار. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Tonight, one more time, we have gathered in the Majlis Abu Abdullah. We ask Imam Zaman, we ask permission to open up the Majlis Az-Zahra. As usual, in the weekend Majlis, we should not forget that the Ahlul Bayt are traveling to Sham and they are in Majlis Yazid and in distress. So we ask from Imam Zaman and to inshallah keep us in his protections and make us worthy of being Azadar Imam Husain and be able to do our duties. We get together in the weekends and in the weekend majalis to remind ourselves and our children about the tragedy of Karbala and what we have gone throughout these years, or our ancestors and our people before us have gone through to keep this majalis. And inshallah, with Faraj Agha Imam Zaman, all the difficulties and tragedies that peoples of the earth are experiencing, it will be resolved and we can see the Muslimin in peace and the peace of Akhir Zaman. بفرج مولا آقای امام زمان. صلوات علی محمد و آل محمد و عجل فرج. اللهم صل على محمد و آل محمد و عجل فرج.
For Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the love of the Holy Prophet and his holy family, please recite the second salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. For the reappearance of our awaited Savior, please recite the third salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. The salam and marsiya that I have tonight depicts, the poet tries to capture the events that took place in the Darbar of Yazid, where the family of the Holy Prophet has been taken as prisoners, have been brought in front of this tyrant. واجبُ الرحم تھے زندہ کے سزاوار نہ تھے مجرئی اہل حرم قابل در مجرئی اہل حرم قابل دربار نہ تھے بولے عابد کے فدائے شہیدی غیر ہوئے ایک فقط ہم ہی شہادت کے سزاوار ایک فقط ہم ہی شہادت کے سزاوار نہ تھے تیر اصغر کو جو مارا تو کہا سر ورنے ہم گنہگار تھے بچے تو گنہگار نہ تھے ہم گنہگار تھے بچے تو گنہگار نہ تھے کہا زہرا نے فلک میں نہ ستایا تھا کسے کہا زہرا نے فلک میں نے ستایا تھا کسے میرے بچے تو اس آفت کے میرے بچے تو اس آفت کے سزاوار نہ تھے شے کے دانتوں پچھڑی رکھ کے کہا ظالم نے ہم نے اس طرح کے دیکھے ہم نے اس طرح کے دیکھے در شہوار نہ تھے گر مسیح ہے دو جہاں کا ہوا افضال انیس اچھے یوں ہو گے جیسے اچھے یوں ہوئیں گے جیسے کبھی بیمار نہ تھے واجب الرحم تھے زندہ کے سزاوار نہ تھے صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد عزیز و حادثہ نو فلک دکھاتا ہے حرم کا قافلہ پیش یزید جاتا ہے گلے بندھے ہیں بدن سب کا تھر تھر آتا ہے نہ سانس لیتے ہیں قیدی نہ بولا جاتا ہے جو گرتے ہیں تو ستمگار نیزے مارتے ہیں وہ رو کے حیدر کرار کو پکارتے ہیں وہ رو کے حیدر کرار کو پکارتے ہیں کہوں اسیروں کا سب حال یہ مجال ہے کیا پہاڑ بننے کا مضمون ہے دست بستہ کھڑا ہوا ہے بیڑیوں سے بس کے غلغلہ پیدا بطول خلد میں حیدر کو دے رہی ہے صدا بلند کرتی ہے فریاد یا علی زینب چلو یزید کے دربار میں چلی زینب چلو یزید کے دربار میں چلی زینب نہیں جفا ہے کہ 12 گلے اور ایک رسن اور اس رسن پہ ہے توق گراں کا رنجو محن کہیں سنا ہے کہ 2 توق اور ایک گردن اور ایک پاؤں میں بھاری 2 حلقے آہن اور ایک پاؤں میں بھاری 2 حلقے آہن جو پاس آ کے لئی نیزوں سے ڈراتے ہیں خدا کے واسطے بچے انہیں دلاتے ہیں خدا کے واسطے بچے انہیں دلاتے ہیں جفائے راہ کے کہنے میں کانپتی ہے زبان غرض کے داخلے مجلس ہوئے بآہ و فغاں مگر کب آئے حضور یزید بے ایمان کے چوبے بیت تھی اور شاہ کے لب و دنداں چھڑی تو ایک تھی پر ظلم 2 نمایاں تھے یہ زیر چوب کبھی لب تھے گاہ دندا تھے بزیر چوب کبھی لب تھے گاہ دندا تھے یہ ظلم دیکھ کے زینب نے کر لیا آنکھیں بند پکارا شمری دربار کیا نہ آیا پسند لو آنکھیں کھولو نہیں ظلم ہوئے گا 2 چند فلک کو دیکھ کے رونے لگی وہ غیرت مند کہا یزید نے کیا آسماں کو دیکھا وہ رو کے بولی کے خالق کی شان کو دیکھا وہ رو کے بولی کے خالق کی شان کو دیکھا کہا یزید نے تب شمر سے بتائے شو تمام یہ کون ہے کہ جو بڑھ بڑھ کے کر رہی ہے کلام وہ بولی پوچھ مجھ سے یہ جانے کیا میرا نام میں رونے والی ہوں کنبے کی زینب ناکام علی کی آئی ندا میری پیاری دختر ہے، سر حسین پکارا ہماری خواہر ہے، سر حسین پکارا ہماری خواہر ہے۔ یزید جائزہ پھر قیدیوں کا لینے لگا، نظر پڑی اسے ایک شہزادی میں لقا، الٹ کے ڈالا ہے منہ پر پھٹا ہوا کرتا، اور اس پر ہاتھوں سے پردہ کیا ہے چہرے کا، ہے سن میں قرد بزرگوں کا پر قرینہ ہے، کہا یہ کون ہے بولا عمر سکینہ ہے، کہا یہ کون ہے بولا عمر سکینہ ہے۔ یزید حالے سکینہ پر رویا اور یہ کہا، سکینہ تجھ کو بہت چاہتا تھا باپ تیرا، وہ بولی چاہنا کیسا پدر تھے مجھ پہ فدا، زباں پہ تھا سکینہ سکینہ صبح و مساء، سلاتے تھے مجھے شبیر اپنے دامہ میں، اور اب تو خاک پہ سوتی ہوں درے زندہ میں، اور اب تو خاک پہ سوتی ہوں درے روز زندہ میں۔ یزید نے کہا جنت میں میوے ہیں اکثر، سکینہ تم کو کھلاتا تھا کیا تمہارا پدر، رتب رتب کہا اس بے پدر نے تتلا کر، دکھا کے نیل تماچوں کا بولی دیکھ ادھر، پدر نے تحفے سے تحفے رتب کھلائے ہیں، اور ان کے بعد تو ہم نے تماچے کھائے ہیں، اور ان کے بعد تو ہم نے تماچے کھائے ہیں۔ یزید بولا رتب دوں تو کھائے گی ناداں، سکینہ بھوکی تو تھی ہو کے خوش پکاری کے ہاں، مگر سکینہ کی خاطر وہاں رتب تھے کہاں، دیا شقین طبق میں سر امام زمان، پکاری حصے میں میرے رتب یہ آیا ہے، کس یتیم نے لوگوں یہ میوہ کھایا ہے، کس یتیم نے لوگوں یہ میوہ کھایا ہے، اٹھایا اس نے جو سر پوش تو یہ آیا نظر، تڑپ رہا ہے سر ایک مردے کا لہو میں تر، ڈری وہ پہلے تو اور پھر کہا یہ رو رو کر، رتب نہیں ہے رتب کے کھلانے والے کا سر، سلام کر کے طبق سے اٹھا لیا سر کو، لہو بھرا ہوا کرتا دکھا دیا سر کو، لہو بھرا ہوا کرتا دکھا دیا سر کو۔ صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرج۔ Get ready for the children's program. بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔
محمد وعلى محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد. But still, in my life, this way. No, this way. In my, yeah, one. Now step backwards. Go back. Take 3 steps backwards. Go ahead. Pull that. Now, I think you should do this at the team. Go ahead. Personal service, one by one. Hassan, today you are the best kid in the center. Yes.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر جل جلاله وجل شانه أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له نقى أشهد أن محمد رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أشهد أن محمد رسول الله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله ووصي رسول الله وخليفته بلا فصل عليه الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على محمد. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. اللهم صل على محمد. هيا على الصلاة، هيا على الصلاة، هيا على الفلاح، هيا على الفلاح، هيا على خير العمل، هيا على خير العمل. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله، لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات، تابع بيننا وبينهم بالخيرات، إنك مجيب الدعوات، إنك على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا عظيم الله. I don't hit his. His feet. بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد و آل محمد وعجل فرجه.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.
اللهم صل على محمد.
أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله.
اللهم صل على محمد.
أشهد أن عليا ولي الله.
اللهم صل.
أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح، حي على خير الأمل، حي على خير الأمل. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله. إن الصلاة. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين، إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان الله، سبحان الله، سبحان الله، سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله، سبحان الله، سبحان الله، سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله، سبحان الله، سبحان الله، سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأرقى وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، الرحمن الرحيم، مالك يوم الدين، إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين، اهدنا الصراط المستقيم، صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. يا كريم يا رحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. بحق فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها وسر المستوضع في أن تصلي على محمد وآله الطاهرين. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله وخير الأسماء لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأرقى. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. الحمد لله وخير الأسماء لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. تسبيح جناب الزهراء. السلام عليكم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله.
اللهم صل على
أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن علي ولي الله. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. والصلاة بالقسم. صلاة العشاء إن الصلاة ونسقي ومحياي ومماتي لله رب العالمين وجهت وجهي. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. الحمد لله رب العالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأرقى وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربي. الله أكبر. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. يا كريم يا رحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. رب اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين يوم يقوم الحساب. رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا. ربي زدني علما والحقني بالصالحين بحق فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها وسر المستوضع فيها أن تصلي على محمد وآله الطاهرين. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. ربي صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله وخير الأسماء لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليكم يا النبي ورحمة الله. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم الله أكبر الله دعاء سلام تھی امام زمان بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد عجل متوجه زيارة السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوسيين السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين السلام عليكم سائر شهداء كربلاء خصوصا سيدي مولاي أبا الفضل العباس يا ابن أمير المؤمنين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء السلام عليك يا سلطان يا أبا الحسن يا علي ابن موسى أيها الرضا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك السلام عليك وعلى آبائك الطيبين الطاهرين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
نعره حیدری
I told you already before the Namaz.
Begin. Best kid in the center for today. Right?
You forgot or did you remember?
That's the same institution. So exactly, so I guess you have to kind of get but we debated about that. So I guess it's
One of the sisters. Oh no, it's the speech now. Yeah, we gotta do this thing.
So we had kid present Sister Amin's presentation for today, and then we Maulana will do his speech.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على الأشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين. Assalamu alaikum. A question. Why is Bibi Zainab's alayhi salam mandate heavier than Imam Husain's alayhi salam? Ashura is over, but Muharram is not. The tragedy of Karbala does not culminate with the killing of Imam Husain and his companions. It actually begins after that. Imam Husain alayhi salam's mandate is over, and is over. The master of the martyrs has returned to his Lord, well pleased. Imam Husain alayhi salam chose death with dignity rather than life with humiliation. Hazrat Zainab binti Ali alayhi salam's mandate has now begun. She will be paraded through the crowded marketplaces of Kufa and Sham, manacled and chained, along with the other female members and children of the holy household. Yet she sees beauty in her ordeal, the beauty of Allah. Hazrat Zainab alayhi salam is no ordinary woman. She is the daughter of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam and Bibi Fatima alayhi salam. She is fasiha, skillfully fluent, baliga, intensely eloquent, and alima ghair mu'allama, who has knowledge without being taught. Her mission is equally important to reveal the truth, to unmask the tyrants, and to be an eloquent tongue for her brother's blood. The caravan of Husain alayhi salam, led from Medina to Karbala, was now led by Bibi Zainab alayhi salam, from Karbala to Syria. When the caravan halted in Kufa, Bibi Zainab courageously confronted the people of Kufa who had betrayed her brother after inviting him. O people of Kufa, woe be upon you! Do you know which part of the messenger of Allah you have cut, and which vow you have broken, and whose blood you have shed, and which respected family you have brought to the public as captives, and whose sanctity you have violated? You have done that which could tear down the skies, open the earth, and make the mountains vanish. As far as the earth goes and as deep as the skies go, your obvious deed has no like, no similarity, and no decency. Indeed, you have done the ugliest, the most grievous and gruesome deed. When the caravan reached Yazid's court in Damascus, Zainab alayhi salam stood up and spoke with the valor and eloquence of her father and the indomitable spirit of her brother. Her sermon shook the foundation of Yazid's mighty empire. O Yazid, I swear by Allah that I do not fear anyone except him and do not complain to anyone but him. You may employ your deceit and trickery, but I swear by Allah the shame and disgrace you have earned by the treatment meted down to us cannot be eradicated. Zainab was crestfallen with grief, but she stood firm because the mandate given to her was heavy. She wrote and recited Marsiyas that jolted people out of their slumber and eventually led to the decline of the Yazidi Empire. Today, nobody remembers Yazid, Ibn Ziyad, Omar Saad, or Shimr, and everyone remembers Hazrat Husain, Hazrat Abu Fazl Abbas, Hazrat Ali Akbar, Hazrat Qasim, and Hazrat Ali Asghar. She teaches us that it's not always easy to stand up against their oppressors. Our oppressors can come in many forms and in many hierarchies, but it's important, even vital, to have courage and face down those who seek to tear us down. We must trust in our values and in ourselves to be strong and steady. Zainab defied the odds and stood up to the heinous and powerful oppressor of her time, becoming a pillar of strength and hope. Lady Zainab's alayhi salam's strength, leadership, and visions are lessons for men and women alike in today's world. Women have an important role to play in all aspects of life, at home, at work, in the community, at university, at our centers, and at mosques. The only way for women in general and Muslim women in particular to pay respects to her sacrifice is by being inspired by her life to be courageous in the face of tyranny, patient in times of trouble, and submissive to the will of Allah. Hazrat Zainab, the role model for the righteous, will forever teach us that when we undergo countless trials in our lives, we should see nothing but beauty in them. Salawat.
We ask Brother Shabeer to come. Before he starts, just a quick announcement for today. Inshallah, after the dinner, youth and high school kids can sit down with Brother Shabeer Kirmani to have question answer session soon after the dinner. So whoever is interested then can come and join him.
رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أفوض أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل ونعم المولى ونعم النصير. والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على الرسول المسدد المصطفى الأمجد المحمود الأحمد الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل. وقل رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، قال الله تبارك وتعالى في كتاب الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أم حسبت أن أصحاب الكهف والرقيم كانوا من آياتنا عجبا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. زينوا مجالسكم بالصلوات على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Iman here in Kansas City or across the globe, wherever you're hearing my voice, Salamun alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Question: how does one develop a community in the modern age? Keep this question in the back of your mind, inshallah. We will return to it. At the first level, we've been discussing that there was a moment in time in the bazaar of Kufa, we're told, when the heads were on the spears of the shuhada, there was one head that spoke miraculously, and that was the head of the son of Zahra, that is the head of Imam Husain alayhi salam. And at that moment in time, he was reciting some verses of the Holy Quran al-Majid wal Furqan al-Hamid. But which verses was he reciting? He was reciting the verses of Surat Al-Kahf. And at that moment in time, we realized that there was a wisdom here, there was a hikmah here, there was a reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted Imam al-Husayn alayhi salam to recite these verses. Why? And what guidance do those give us today in this era and this time? Last night we laid out some of the problems, some of the challenges that we have been facing as a community in the United States in particular, but in the globe at large. This is across the pond in Europe as well as in America. And we said that we need to address the problems based on zaman and makan. That is, in this part and based on time and space. And in our world, we have a certain challenges that we're facing that may not be faced in other parts of the world. Tonight, I want to work on solutions. You know, the times are changing. Because you may say that this is a problem. Do I pack up and leave? Packing up and leave is not the solution. And believe me, it's very difficult for me to say this, but this is happening everywhere, because it has come to my attention that in America I said one thing, then unfortunately some people are leaving Shiaism. It's happening. Some people go off to college. Often it's when you go off to college. When you go off to college, you hit college, some people have left, they become atheists, they become Christian, they become even Sunni. But in Pakistan, you are now seeing an environment where some of the Shia kids are now becoming Qadiani or Ahmadi. So you think that the solution is something that it's a problem based on this? No, this has become a global phenomenon. Ask me about how many of my friends, my comrades, who, for example, I remember one of my comrades when I was doing my PhD in engineering at my university, I met one of my colleagues. He was in the class with me. We're sitting in the same engineering class. I said, where are you from? He said, I'm from Iran. I said, MashaAllah, Alhamdulillah. Where in Iran? He said, I'm from Mashhad. MashaAllah, Mashhad, Imam al-Radha alayhi salam. He said, no, I have to stop you right there. I don't believe in any religion. I have no belief in this. This is all nonsense. So someone can be in the vicinity of Imam Radha alayhi salam and still maybe not have the ma'arif of who Imam Radha alayhi salam is. And we saw time and time again, someone who comes from Pakistan, someone who comes from India, someone who comes from Iran, someone who's a follower of the Shia madhab, they could be Sadat, follower from the line of the Ahlul Bayt, but sometimes they come here and then they change. The circumstance, the environment has an impact on them, whether you and I realize it or not. And sometimes it can be subtle. I'll give you an example in a couple of moments. Therefore, we need to make sure in the ghaibat of the Imam of our time, we need to make sure we do our main priority. And that is it to build a government? Is it to build this? Is it to build that? All of that may be good. The priority, according to the narrations in the time of ghaibat of the Imam for you and I, is to protect our iman, to preserve our iman. To remain on the path of Ali Muhammad. To remain on the path of tashayyu. Because do you know through which difficulties did this madhab, did this faith that came to us from Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad, do you know through which difficulties it came to us? The narrations say, if you read the history of Baghdad, the history of Baghdad, you know, that was a very old civilization. But during the times of the Abbasids, they rebuilt Baghdad. When they built it, they built this city. Mesopotamia was an old civilization. When they built it, historically, you would put walls around buildings, around cities. You would do this around cities to protect the city because someone would ambush it at night. And there used to be one main gate that people would enter from. And people would enter this because you would control who comes in and out so that you remain safe. Do you know how the walls of Baghdad were built? The walls of Baghdad were built, you know, when you and I build a building, we take cement, the dry powder, and in it we put water. And when we put the cement and water and we mix it, we then line the walls and we build the bricks. They were not draining water into the cement powder. They were draining the blood of Sayyid Hassanis. They would slaughter them and they would drain their blood. Furthermore, historians say that there was a time in the same era when they were building Baghdad that they would, you close two sides of the wall together in order to build it. Those who are civil engineers, they may know the history of this. At that point in time, when they used to close the walls, historians say they would not close some of the walls until they put a Sayyid Hassani alive between the two walls, and they would suffocate to death. Why am I telling you this? The reason I'm telling you this, my dear brothers and sisters, is that if you and I were to, God forbid, na'udhu billah min dhalik, if we were to leave the path of Ali Muhammad, if we were to leave the path of tashayyu, it was as if we are drenching water over all of the difficulties our ancestors have gone through. You need to keep this in mind. Therefore, tonight, I want to come towards solutions. A few things that I want you to look at. Well, number one, the first level, what impact does the environment have on us? What is it that the environment can affect us? How does it affect us? And what can we learn from it? Number one. Number two, what guidance do the verses of the Quran al-Majid wal Furqan al-Hamid give us in our world? That is, Surat Al-Kahf, what was the Shan Nuzul? How was it revealed? And what guidance does it give us? What were the verses about and how can we learn from them today? What is the guidance from the Ahlul Bayt? At the third level, what teachings can we understand from the lives of the Ahlul Bayt that can give us guidance and how they operated so we can understand how to build a community? How do we build a community? What are some things that you and I should look at as a community in order to develop this country, this community, and ultimately our society at large? What can we do? And finally, how is it that the dhikr of Ali Muhammad and also the masaib of Ali Muhammad may be the biggest cure that we have in our lives, but we may not realize it? This is what we'll come to in the brief moments that we have together. This is our agenda for tonight. Wherever you are, here in Kansas City or across the globe, from the bottom of your heart, send a salawat on Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli. At the first level, there's a book entitled Noise, which I recommend you all read. It's by Dr. Daniel Kahneman. Dr. Daniel Kahneman won the Nobel Prize in economics, although he was a psychologist. He won the Nobel Prize in economics, and his new book has come out. His original book is called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's on how the mind works. I recommend you all read it. His new book has come out. It's called Noise. In this book, Dr. Daniel Kahneman comes forward and says, and this will help those of you who are about to go to university, inshallah, or going to grad school. When you go, check the weather. What do I mean? They've done studies that two identical candidates, identical ACT scores, identical SAT scores, identical GPA, everything on paper is exactly the same. But when they go to interview at the university, UMKC, or for example, Washington University in St. Louis, or whatever institutions you have here, these renowned institutions, you go to the institution on the day of the interview. When you get there, you give the interview. After you've completed the interview, the same two candidates, identical, one gets accepted, the other one gets denied. Why? Same responses, same GPA, same ACT score, same SAT score. Do you know what the researchers said? The weather. The weather outside when the candidate leaves the office impacts the decision makers. They said that when the people who were leaving the interview, when it was sunny outside and they left the office, the people who were making the judgment, they looked at the weather impacted them, and they checked them and they said admitted. And when the weather outside was raining and they saw this weather, the same candidate they rejected. And this happens over and over again. Why am I saying this to you? Our environment has a tremendous impact on us, whether we realize it or not. So when you go for your interview, check the weather and set the time and date accordingly. It'll help you. Why do I say this? Because this is one example. Think of all of the other things that are going on in your life that you may not realize that are impacting you day in and day out. I'll give you another example. I was just reciting in the first 10 days in California, in Los Angeles. When I was in Los Angeles, some of the people who were coming to the Majlis from our community worked at NASA. At NASA in California, there is a particular laboratory. The laboratory is called NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Jet propulsion, another term for it within jet propulsion, or within, you can think of it as rocket science. You've ever heard of rocket scientists? That old saying that it's not rocket science? Rocket scientists were coming to the Majalis. I want to share something with you. We encourage our next generation to become highly educated. We should do it. It's very good. Become doctors, become lawyers, become engineers. However, remember this. I cannot go to work in the day, Monday through Friday, and do rocket science in the morning, and I come to the Imam Barga and the Husaini at night. I'm not going to shut off my brain. That's not how it works. What's going on outside of these walls and what's going on inside of these walls is two different worlds. And our young and old alike are navigating these two different worlds. One world, outside these walls, everything is individualism. If you read, you need to know at least 6 phases of history. If you are a parent living in this part of the world and you do not know these 6 phases of history, be very cautious, because these dictated why we think the way we think. The last 600 years of history. That is the scientific revolution, the Renaissance, Enlightenment, the Industrial Revolution, modernity, and post-modernity. These are the 6 phases of history and philosophy that have took place in the last 600 years. And if you don't know this, you don't know why you think the way you think. Individual, in the modern society, it's focused on individualism. Individualism has its positives and it has its negatives. One of the positives of individualism is each individual goes to their maximum potential. However, it also has an impact on family. Family declines. Religion declines. Many of these things that kept communities together throughout history decline. So outside these walls is individualism. Inside these walls, it's community or communal. Outside of these walls, everything we're told is critical thinking, critique, analysis. Inside these walls, everything is conformity. Conform. Whatever it is, you have to get with the program or get out. So the young person who's navigating this terrain is like, hold on a second. Who am I? What's my identity? What is my life? There's one life outside these walls. There's one life inside these walls. And I can't make sense of it. So we need to be very precise in how we address these issues and how we come to it. Because if we don't, we will begin to lose people one after the other. What is one thing that we can do as a solution? There's many things that you and I can discuss in the problems. I want to give you some solutions. If you're a community leader and everyone in front of me is a community leader, today or tomorrow, remember one thing. Singapore and Jamaica, remember these 2 countries. Singapore and Jamaica, both of them gained their independence at the same time. Both of them became independent from British rule, the English, the British rule. Amongst them, they all separated at the same time, both of them. Jamaica said, hold on, we are going to develop our economy through 2 things. Both of them, obviously you become a newly independent country, you have to figure out how you're going to develop your economy. Jamaica said, we are going to focus on 2 things, tourism and natural resources. And they have really great weather, tourism is great, and they also have amazing resources. They have aluminum, Australia and Jamaica. These are the 2 most aluminum-rich countries. So they said, we're going to focus on tourism and on the natural resources. They said they're going to focus on their land, their terrain. Singapore said, no, we are not going to focus on tourism. We are not going to focus on our land. We are going to focus on one thing and one thing only. That is human capital development. We're going to develop our people. We're going to develop the minds of our people. We're going to get them the best education. And when we get them the best education, they are going to become our economic engine. Fast forward 5 decades, you now look at everyone is trying to replicate the Singaporean model. How did Singapore become a first world country? What did they do to eradicate corruption? What did they do to become such an established, developed country? No one talks about Jamaica in the same sentence. Yes, you may go to Jamaica for vacation. And there may be other factors, but this is what historians have outlined. What guidance does this give you and I? Imam Sajjad alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Sayyidus Sajideen, according to narrations, he had at least 70, if not 100, and some riwayat say 1,000 slaves, servants in his house. One question that comes forward often by young and old alike is, why didn't Judaism, why didn't Christianity, why didn't Islam outright ban slavery? It's a good question. I remember I met Karen Armstrong. Karen Armstrong is a writer on Judaism, Christianity, Islam. She's written A History of God, 5,000 Years. She's written many books. I met her in Florida. When I met her, I asked her this question. I'm sure you get asked this question all the time. But what is one answer that you've come across? That is, when Islam comes forward, when Judaism comes forward, when Christianity comes forward, why didn't they outrightly reject slavery? Her response was interesting, which comes from many other philosophers. That is, we are still slaves today. We're just industrial slaves. I'll leave that for you to think about tonight, inshallah. What does that mean, industrial slaves? Dr. Noam Chomsky at MIT, the most cited professor in our world today, Dr. Noam Chomsky was asked the same question, that are we slaves today? He said, we are definitely slaves today. We're industrial slaves. But he said, hold on a second. No, 1 second. I have the choice today that I can switch jobs. If I don't like my employer, I can quit. His response is interesting. He says, yes, you have a choice between working for someone and being enslaved to them or starving to death. Those are your 2 choices. We still are enslaved, whether we realize it or not. Nonetheless, Imam Sajjad had 70, 100 or 1,000 slaves or servants in his house. But he didn't ask them to do anything. Imam Sajjad, you have all these people who you paid money with. By the way, we've often been told that the Imams did not have money. It's not true. Imam Ali, 25 years. They say, what was Imam Ali doing? For 25 years, when the first, second, third, during their time, Imam Ali was not just sitting at home. Imam Ali was developing property, in our language, property development. He would go towards the outskirts of Medina and he would take a sack on his back. They said, Ya Ali, where are you going? Because in Islamic law at that time, if the land was not owned by a government or it was not privately owned, if you developed the land became yours. So he would go outside the city. If it's not owned by the government, if it's not owned by private entity, he would develop the land. So they said, Ya Ali, where are you going with this sack on your back? And what are you taking on your back? He says, I'm taking date palms, inshallah. You know, date palms are huge. We have a lot of date palms in Florida. You can't have them on your back. But they were seeds. So Imam Ali took those seeds to the outskirts of town and he put them in the ground. After many years, they became date palms. And when they became date palms, he used the dates and he would sell them, and he had orchards. Furthermore, Imam Ali built oases. At that time, if you hit water in the desert, it was as if you had hit oil. We're told there's a moment in time where Imam Ali, during that period, he leaves and he goes to the outskirts of the city. When he goes to the outskirts of the city, Imam Ali takes his shovel and he begins to dig and strike the ground. When he begins to dig and strike the ground, he's looking for water, he's digging. The first time he goes, strikes the whole day, morning to evening, till sun up to sundown, he strikes the ground, no water comes. The people who are around there begin to watch. They say, Ali is going after this dunya, Ali is going after this world, Ali is going after this, and Ali is going after that. The second day, Imam Ali comes again. He begins to strike the ground again and again and again. The people are talking, Ali is going after this dunya. Nothing on the second day. He comes back the third day. When he comes back the third day, he strikes the ground. Nothing. Strikes the ground, nothing. People are still chattering and talking. Until a moment in time comes, according to the narration, when he strikes the ground. At that moment in time, he comes back out. His sweat is pouring from his forehead. When his sweat is pouring from his forehead, he wipes it and he goes back into the tunnel or the hole that he has dug over the last 3 days. And now he strikes with a Khaybari strike. And when he strikes, water comes out. As soon as the water comes out, everyone says Ali has become rich. Ali is the wealthiest person in town. As a side note, Imam Ali doesn't need to strike anything. He can touch the ground, water will come out. He's Mazhar al-Ajaib. But he's giving you and I a lesson. He did this as soon as he struck this, because people said he can build oases, he's the richest person in town. He said, bring me a paper and bring me a pen. They brought him a paper and a pen. He wrote down at that point in time, he said, I am waqfing this, I am endowing this spring, this water spring, I am giving this to the people here. And then he said, use the money that comes, the income that comes from this for a few things. Number one, make sure that anyone who is a poor person, look after them with this money. Anyone who does not have the money for medical treatment, use the funds from this spring to help them. Anyone who is not able to get married, make sure they're able to get married through the income from this spring. Anyone who is a foreigner who is visiting this land, use the income from this spring to help that person. And whatever is left over, make sure you develop the people, and those who do not have any assistance, the orphans, make sure you look after them. This was development. This was the ideas of the Imams. Imam Ali, development. Imam Hassan, development. Imam Husain, development. Come back to Imam Sajjad. Imam Sajjad is freeing slaves. He's buying slaves. They're very expensive. They're not cheap. It's like you and I going and buying, in our modern day, Lamborghinis and Ferraris and things of this nature. That's how they were seen at that time. Very expensive commodity. How do you do this? The Imam had many lands. But he never asked them to do anything. He never asked them to make the bed. He never asked them to do anything around the house. The only thing the Imam would ask was for them to bring a glass of water for him. You know, to give someone water, to give someone a glass of water, the only thing in Islam that a child is allowed to ask their parents for is a glass of water. Don't all go and ask your parents for at once tonight. That's the only thing. Why? Because that's how much sawab and ajr there is in giving water. Imam would say, can you please get me a glass of water? They would bring the Imam a glass of water. When they brought the Imam a glass of water, he would say, thank you for this, and I have freed you in Allah's way. Go now. But at that point in time, Yabna Rasulullah, why go through all this effort? Why do this? The response comes back from the ulama and the Ahlul Bayt, that when these people would be freed by the Imam, they would go back to different places. Someone would go to Yemen, someone would go to Africa, someone would go to Ethiopia, Abyssinia, someone would go to Afghanistan, Someone would go to different places. But when they came to the Imam, they were servants. When they left, they were ambassadors of the Imam. Because at that point in time, the Imam had trained them. The Imam had showed them through his words, yes. Through his hadiths and the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt, yes. But more than that, he showed them with his akhlaq, his being, how he lived. And then they understood that's true Islam. What we heard from the Umayyads, that's not true Islam. That's propaganda that's been done against the Ahlul Bayt. Then they began to understand who are the Ahlul Bayt and what is true Islam. Use that model in our communities as well. Develop each individual the way the Imam tried to develop people and did develop people. Each youth, each individual in our community, we should focus on them as if they are our own child. There's a saying in the mosques in Istanbul, if you've ever been to Istanbul, and you ask the tour guide, he'll tell you what's written. I remember asking, you ask the guy in the back, you say, what's written on here? What's written here in the mosque over there? And it's a saying of wisdom, never forget it. And the saying is this, it says it's written here that if you do not hear children crying in the mosque, be very afraid of the future of your generations, of your community. Because if they're not here from the get-go, what expectation do you have that in 5, 10, 15 years, they'll be here? Therefore, we should make accommodations. We should not get upset if we hear a child crying or making a noise like this. We need to be supportive. Imagine you're a young parent and you're trying to bring your child to the Husaini Imam Bargah and you're trying to get them the ilm of Ali Muhammad. And when they come to the majlis, rather people are giving looks and stares and things of this nature. We need to nurture them and bring them together. The same way Imam Sajjad did. You know, sometimes the servants, they came from different places. Maybe they didn't have the adab, they didn't have the akhlaq, but the Imams were patient with them. And they taught them and they trained them and they helped them build them up. Use this in order to build a community and a society, number one. Number two, at the next level, Surat Al-Kahf. What's the wisdom? What's the secret within Surat Al-Kahf that you and I understand? We're told Imam al-Husain's head on the spear, according to the narrations, Imam is reciting Surat Al-Kahf. Am hasibta anna ashab al-kahfi wal-raqim kanu min ayatina ajaba. What is going on here? What is the shan-e-nuzul? When was this revealed? Walid, Utbah and Shayba. These were three individuals who wanted to prove Rasulullah wrong. They wanted to try to say Rasulullah is wrong. When Rasulullah began to do his tabligh at the age of 40, of course he was born a prophet, but when he began to tell the message of Islam at that point in time, according to the narrations, they would go to the rabbis from Mecca. They were in Mecca. They would go towards Medina. In Medina lived some rabbis. And they would go to the rabbis and they would periodically ask them, give us some questions that we can ask Muhammad. And when we ask Muhammad these questions, he's not able to answer them. And then we prove that he's wrong. So one time they went to the rabbis and they said, tell us a question that if we ask Muhammad he can't answer, then we'll know he's wrong. They said, ask this question. We have in our scriptures that Jacob was Palestine. He was from Palestine. How did his progeny end up in Egypt? Because Yusuf ended up in Egypt. And then from there, Musa ended up in Egypt. How did the Palestinians end up in Egypt? What's the answer? When they came with this question, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through Rasulullah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the entire Surah Yusuf in response and explained the entire story of how that happened. At another moment in time, we're told that these same three individuals, Walid, Utbah and Shayba, did not have any iman in their heart. If you know the history, many of these people became Muslim due to convenience later on. That's the reality of the matter. So they were trying to belie Rasulullah in the beginning. When they came to the rabbis, they said, give us some more questions to ask Muhammad. He said, look, if we ask these questions and he's able to answer, fair enough. But if he's not able to answer, you do with him what you want. They said, number one, ask him, who were those companions, who were those youth who left their dominion, their area, and asked Allah to protect them, asked God to protect them? Who were those youth in the ancient times? Said, very well. Number two, what was the conversation? Who did Musa go and meet and what conversation did he have? Number two. Number three, who was the one who went and traveled in the east and the west? Who was that individual? Ask him these three questions. When they got back, according to the narrations, when they got back to Mecca, they asked Rasulullah. According to the narrations, Rasulullah came forward and said, I will await wahy from Jibreel, as he normally would do. Now there is a difference here between us and our Ahl Sunnah brothers. They say Rasulullah got worried. Of course, we don't accept that because there was what they call a delay in the wahy to come. Of course, for us, there's no delay. Whatever Allah wants happens. وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْحَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. And this messenger does not say anything except wahy. And wahy comes when Allah wants it to come. So Rasulullah said, I will await wahy and I'll give you the answer. 1 day passed, 2 days passed, 3 days passed. And then the people of Mecca began to talk that Muhammad doesn't have the answers to these things. But Allah, when He came and He gave the response, He gave a comprehensive response. Rasulullah says, Jibreel has descended and here is your answer. Allah in one go revealed the entire Surah Kahf. And in the entire Surah Kahf, Allah gave the story of Ashab al-Kahf, the companions of the cave. Allah gave the story of Musa and Khidr. And Allah gave the story of Dhul Qarnayn, all in one. And He said the response is within all of these. Ashab al-Kahf in Christianity are called the companions of the cave of Ephesus. In Christianity, they say the location of this cave is in modern day Turkey, according to them. Within our school of thought, within the Muslim world, there are two theories. One theory is in modern day Syria or Sham, in that area. The other one, which more people ascribe to, is in modern day Jordan, right outside of Amman, Jordan. In that area. That is where the companions of the cave are, Ashab al-Kahf are. So what happened? These were people who had belief. They had Iman, and they were living in an environment where they were Christians themselves, of that time, of course. And at that point in time, because from my youth, I need you to know this, why do I say of that time? Where did the Trinity come from? You have to know your history. If you don't know, you can get swayed. Constantine, you know Istanbul? It used to be called Constantinople, after Constantine the emperor. Constantine wanted to unite his entire dominion under one rule. He wanted one religion, of one form of Christianity. But the Christian popes, you know, like Akbar did this as well in India, right? He wanted one Deen Ilahi. He wanted to bring everyone under one roof. At that time, he said, bring one form of Christianity. Everyone needs to follow the same form. At that point in time, he put all of them in the Council of Nicaea. He put them in one room and he said, make a decision of what form. They could not come to a conclusion. So Constantine said, you need to make a decision. The decision they came up with was the Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. It was a compromise. And a compromise is not the religion of Allah. That's why I say Christianity in the original time was correct. But now we don't have that form. Even the Bible, the closest form of the original Bible that exists is called the Red Letter Bible, which you never hear about today. It's not the King James Bible for sure. Having said that, they were Christians in a time where others were not, and they wanted to believe, but there were only a few. The Quran says that some say that there were 3 and the 4th of them was their dog. And there were some say there were 5 and the 5th of them was their 5 and the 4th of them, 6th of them was their dog. But the true number was 7 and the 8th of them was their dog. The question that comes forward here, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make so many arrangements for 7 people and their dog? Why? One principle that you and I get, and we understand this from Imam al-Husain, from Medina to Mecca, from Mecca to Karbala. On the way, he gives a statement. He says religion is on the lips of people. And when push comes to shove, when times get tough, قَلَّتْ دَيَّانُونَ, the people of religion are very small. They're very small numbers. Imam proved that. You see, you and I need to make sure that we are always on the path of Husainiyat at every moment and at every time. Nonetheless, they were believers. They asked Allah to preserve them. When they asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve them, according to the narrations, at that moment in time when they asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve them, according to the narrations, Allah inspired them. They went towards this cave. When they went towards this cave, they went to sleep. When they went to sleep, the Quran says that the light was hitting at an angle, it was not directly hitting them. And so Allah preserved their bodies. Allah said that we made them turn from left to right so that there was blood circulation going on in their bodies. And Allah protected and preserved all of these things. After some period of time, they awoke. When they awoke, they said, how long have we been sleeping? They said, oh, a yawm or ba'da yawm? Yawm or ba'da yawm? A day or part of a day? Little did they know that they had been sleeping for over 300 years. At that point in time, they felt a hunger. When they felt a hunger at that moment in time, they said, let us send one of us to go to the bazaar. And when we go to the bazaar at that point in time, go and get that ta'am, that food which is pure. Hold on a second here. Pure food. Allah could have just said in the Quran and told Ashab al-Kahf to go get any food for the bazaar. Why pure food? We wouldn't understand this without the Ahlul Bayt. Imam al-Husain on the day of Ashura, according to the narrations, he faces the army of Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad. He gets up on a camel. When he gets up on a jamal, on a camel, he looks at the enemy on the other side. And he says, know who I am. I am the son of Fatima Az-Zahra. I am the son of Ali al-Murtaza. I am the son of Rasulullah. I am this and I am that. Hamza is from our family. And he tells everyone. Why? He's doing ihtimam hujjah. He knows they won't listen. But he's saying nobody can say on Yawm al-Qiyamah that they don't know who I am. But as soon, and this is the point that I wanted to tell you, as soon as he finishes the khutbah, Imam Husain gets off the camel, he looks at Abul Fadl al-Abbas, he says, Abbas, let's go. Nothing I have said will impact them. Why? Butunukum min al-haram. Their stomachs are filled with haram. The principle that you and I get with this is that our income, our food, and everything that we do should be halal. The principle that we get from Ashab Al-Kahf, they said not any food, pure food. They sent one man to the bazaar, one of the youth from them, he went to the bazaar. When he went to the bazaar, he wanted to get some food and it came time for payment and he pulls out a coin. When he pulls out the coin, he said, are you serious? You want to pay with this? This is from the time of Daqyanus. You know, Daqyanusi, it comes from here. He says, this is from the time of Daqyanus. What do you want? Are you joking? He said, no, this is all I have. He says, at that point, the young man understood that they had not been sleeping for a day or a part of a day. They had been sleeping for a long time, 300 years. At that point in time, over 300 years, I'll explain in a moment. He comes back. He comes back and tells his companions that we have not been sleeping for a day or a part of a day. We have been sleeping for over 300 years, 309 years. At that point in time, they pray to Allah to protect them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserves them up until this day. Here's what I want to share with you. Salman, we would not understand these verses without the Ahlul Bayt. That's why Rasulullah said Quran and Ahlul Bayt. Why? Salman al-Farsi, Salman al-Muhammadi, that individual who, not according to us, but Ibn Arabi, you know, many people are very interested in Ibn Arabi, Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi, who was one of the founders of Tasawwuf or Sufism. All of them go back to Ibn Arabi, even Urafa. Ibn Arabi was from Andalus. He was a Spaniard. He was from Granada, Cordoba, this area. And he wrote the Bezels of Wisdom, Fusus al-Hikam. You know, sometimes people say, you know, only in the last 50, 60 years, the aqidah of some of the Ahlul Sunnah has been destroyed because of petrochemical dollars. Before, some people had Iman. Why? According to Ibn Arabi, when Rasulullah said, Salman minna Ahlul Bayt, that statement, according to Ibn Arabi, of Rasulullah saying, Salman minna Ahlul Bayt, raised Salman to the level of Isma, according to Ibn Arabi, that he's ma'soom. Of course, from our perspective, ma'soom are only 14, the Ahlul Bayt. However, he's saying that the respect, Salman's not ordinary. He's extraordinary. Remember, Salman is on the 10th level of Iman. Abu Dharr is on the 9th level. And the narrations say that if Abu Dharr knew what was in the heart of Salman, he would want to kill him. Why? Because that is the gap in the Iman between the two. What Salman could handle is not the same level of what Abu Dharr could handle. Although Abu Dharr's high status is very high. Narrations say that some ulama say that Salman may have been from the awsiya of Nabi Isa, the disciples of Nabi Isa. Why? Because the one who gave ghusl and kafan to Salman was Amir al-Mu'minin Imam Ali. And a ma'soom gives ghusl to a ma'soom. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. ए अबू जर दोस्ती चलती रहे तो ठीक है पूछ मत लेना अकीदा हजरत सलमान से. The poet says that at that point in time, the gap between Salman and Abu Dharr is such. The poet says, Abu Dharr, let your friendship with Salman continue, but don't ask Salman what is in his heart, because you will not be able to take the capacity of what's in his heart. He's at a higher level. At that point in time, Salman al-Farsi, Salman al-Muhammadi narrates that I was in the vicinity of Rasulullah. When I was in the vicinity of Rasulullah, the first three, this is the narration, not my words, Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman, they came to Rasulullah. They said, Ya Rasulullah, why do you always say the fadail of Ali? Why do you always say the merits of Ali? Why do you always put Ali at such a high position, a high status? He says, not from me, it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I didn't do this. Allah commanded me. I don't say anything from myself. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. At that point in time, they said, no, we want proof. We want evidence. They would often do this. At that point in time, he said, what do you want? Okay, which people from the people of the past are alive today that you want to hear from? They said, maybe Ashab Al-Kahf. Rasulullah says, Ashab Al-Kahf. Yes, Ashab Al-Kahf are alive. You want to meet them? He said, yes. He said, very well. If they give some dalil, would you accept? Yes. Rasulullah, on authority of Salman al-Farsi or Salman al-Muhammadi, Rasulullah says, very well. He says, where's Ali? He said, call Ali. He calls on Ali. Imam Amir al-Mu'min comes. Rasulullah takes a cloth, he puts it on the ground. He says, Ali, sit in the middle. Amir al-Mu'min sits in the middle. When Amir al-Mu'min sits in the middle, he says, you other three, you sit on the other corners. They sat on the corners. Salman, you sit on the fourth corner. At that point in time, when they sit, Rasulullah does what's called tayyul ard. You know tayyul ard, you fold the land. According to, some of the ulama can even do this. I'm getting sidetracked. Nonetheless, he does tayyul ard. They end up, according to what Salman says, they end up in front of a cave. When they end up in front of a cave, it is the cave of Ashab al-Kahf. At that point in time, Rasulullah had told them that each and every one of you, you do your ibadah, you do 2 rakah salah, and then you address the people of the cave. Whoever gets a response, you'll know they are the right one. At that point in time, they all did their prayer there. The first one comes forward, says, Assalamu alaikum ya ashab al-kahf. No response. The second one comes forward, Assalamu alaikum ya ashab al-kahf. No response. Third one comes, Assalamu alaikum ya ashab al-kahf. Nothing, no response. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes forward. He says, Assalamu alayka ashab al-kahf, wa alaykum as-salam ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. At that point in time, when they came forward and said this, they said very well. At that point in time, according to the narrations, at that very moment in time, they all got back onto the cloth and they went back to Rasulullah. Rasulullah brought them back. Rasulullah said, Jibreel just told me what happened. Do you have any more doubt anymore? They said, no, we don't have any more doubt. But afterwards, they went down that path. You see, till this day, if you go to Jordan, you will find an inscription. Where is the door of the Ashab al-Kahf? There is an inscription that is written at the hands of Imam Ali. That's how it got there, according to historians. Because Imam Ali was there and he showed at that moment in time that he's Amir al-Mu'mineen, not of only you and I, of all of the creation. But this is why I mention this. Because without Bab-e Madinatul Ilm, you and I cannot understand the Quran. Why? Because when the Surah Kahf came, the verses said that they slept for 309 years, not 300 years. When Walid, Utbah and Shayba brought the verses to the rabbis outside of Mecca and Medina, they said the verses say 309. The rabbi said, hold on a second. Our old books say that it was 300 years. They slept for 300 years. This Quran says 309 years. This is a mistake. This is a problem. Who answered the question? Bab-e Madinatul Ilm. Imam Ali answered the question. Because when they came back to make this complaint, Ali said, I will answer you. 300 is right and 309 is also right. Both of them are right. They said, how are both right? He said, the 300 is in the solar calendar. 309 is in the lunar calendar. Because in the solar calendar, there are 365 days. And in the lunar calendar, there are 354 days. If you put the numbers in, you find exactly 9 years gap between the two. But you and I could not know this without Bab-e Madinatul Ilm. Ya Ali. That's why we say Ali. That's why we say Haidar. That's why we say Mazhar al-Ajaib. That's why we say Amir al-Mu'mineen. I once looked when I was younger, in college in those times, I wanted to see Imam Ali as a leader above the Shia-Sunni dialogue, above Islam, as a world leader. Why do we follow Amir al-Mu'mineen? And believe me, there is not one moment in life, in the history of Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, that he has ever caused us to bow our heads in shame, ever, ever. He has always caused us to raise our head in pride to say that this is our Imam. Every other ruler in the history of Islam, except Rasulullah and Amir al-Mu'mineen, have caused us to bow our heads in shame. At every moment. Ali is Ali. No one can understand Ali except Rasulullah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not my words. But remember one thing, hold fast to Ali. My youth especially. Letter 31 of Nahjul Balagha. Write it down on your heart and never forget it. This is the letter that Imam Ali wrote to Imam Hassan. Some ulama say Imam Hassan or Muhammad Hanafiya. But it's a guidance that he's given you and I about how to live life, how to live in this world. Kalam-e-Imam, Imam-e-Kalam. Amir al-Mu'mineen's words are the height of rhetoric and they're the best words. You cannot get better words than this. There's a lot to say. I'm coming to the solutions. In our modern world, what do you and I do? How do we do this? The questions are getting tougher at the next level. The questions are getting harder. We need to know how to answer them. What are the questions? Stanford University. Stanford is often 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the country in rankings. There's a professor by the name of Robert Sapolsky, Dr. Robert Sapolsky. He's written a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. He's written several books. One of them is called Why Zebras Never Get Ulcers. Imagine you're a zebra, you're getting chased by a lion. When you're getting chased by a lion, at some point in time, at that point when you're being chased by a lion, your body shuts off all non-essential organs. Only the essential ones remain. But after 3 minutes, when you outchase the lion, if you do, you go back to normal. The zebra doesn't get ulcers. Ulcers are often caused by stress. The zebra doesn't have stress. Why? Because they forget what happened. They're not thinking, is the lion still thinking about me? No. But you and I, we suffer from something called chronic stress. We're always thinking about these things. I have this to do in the morning. I have this, and this. Sometimes forgetting is good. Dr. Robert Sapolsky teaches a class at Stanford called Behavioral Genetics. Behavioral genetics, we've known for a long time that our genes, the genes that we get from our parents, our grandparents, they have a big impact on how we look, our skin color, our height, our physical attributes, nose, eyes, ears, all of these things. But what we now know, according to Dr. Sapolsky, is that our genes have an impact on our behavior, how we act in society. I'll give you an example. Dr. Sapolsky says we have a gene that's called MAO alpha. It's a gene variant. MAO alpha, the carrier of MAO alpha gene, they are more prone to antisocial violence, that is shooting up, for example, a movie theater or killing people. If and only if, and that's very important, if and only if this carrier of the MAO alpha gene experiences childhood trauma. So stay with me here, this is very important. Imagine in 5, 10, 15 years in the legal environment and in medicine and law, what's going to happen is this. Somebody commits a crime where they go and shoot up for example, a movie theater. The judge has to make a decision. They'll say, number one, does this person have the gene MAO alpha? Okay, check box 1. Now number 2, they'll look, did they have any history where they experienced childhood trauma in their life? If they did, check box 2. Number 3, that would have an impact on the sentencing that they get afterwards. Why am I saying this to you? This is one example of the impact that childhood trauma can have. There's others. Why do I say this? Here is one potential solution of how we develop the community. Remember, I'm being very humble here. I could be wrong here. Why? If you read the history of philosophers and historians, people have been very good historically to diagnose problems, but their prescriptions have often not worked as well. Why? For example, who? Karl Marx. You all know Karl Marx, the Communist Manifesto? Karl Marx diagnosed the problem of capitalism perfectly, beautifully, absolutely right. But his prescription and his solution did not work in practice. This is one example. There's several other examples. So what I need you and I to do, and everyone needs to stay with me in these brief moments together, you and I cannot outsource our brains to the mimbar alone. We need to think. We need to think together. Yes, the mimbar is one place for us to get ideas and have a dialogue, a starting point, but not the only point. We need to all think on this together to get solutions. The solution that I give or we come up with in Kansas City may be very different than the solution that's needed in LA or in DC or in New York, because the lay of the land will dictate the solutions. Having said this, remember this always, 4 plus 3. 4 plus 3, 4 square model and the triangle model. They stack one on the other. Square model, on top of it, the triangle model, a house. What is it? The first level of the 4 square model is the family structure, number 1. The base layer, family. The second layer is, on the side of it, is that which is the madrasa system. You know, the weekend school, Sunday school, second layer. The third side of the equation is the mimbar, the majalises. The top layer is the company that you keep, the friends, the people you associate with. These are those things that we have to take care of internally within our walls. Above the 4 square model is the model that is above, that is the 3-sided triangular model. What is that? Finance, media, and politics. That is external. How do we interact with people outside of these walls? What is it that we are incubating? How do we build a community? How do we build a society outside of these walls? How do others look at us? Are we speaking for ourselves or is someone else speaking for us? Do we have influence in society or do we not? These are very important. Let's come to the internal aspect, the micro, if you will, and the other one being the macro. Micro within this is the foundational layer is family. Remember this, my dear brothers and sisters. According to researchers today, what children experience in the first few years of their life has an impact on them for the rest of their life. If they consistently see husband and wife or parents fighting, that will have an impact on them. If they consistently see abuse, that will have an impact on them. If they are beaten or some of these things, it can trigger things in there that will have impact on them for the rest of their life. Therefore, it's very important for you and I to know this. When husband and wife, I'm having to deal with this. That's why I'm mentioning this. I'm having to deal with a situation where we live in a world where we got young and old, we got young people married. They're both a doctor, one's a lawyer, one's a doctor, one's a engineer, one's a this. And they come forward, and on paper, these marriages were perfect. But in the real world, we gave them the wrong tools. Why? We said, and remember this always, according to philosophers, the quintessential question of the 20th century was this: what do you do? And when someone said they're a doctor or lawyer, engineer, we inflated everything about their life. And when they said, for example, I'm a janitor, we deflated everything in their life. We judged someone's value based on their job. And that's one slice of their life. That's not their whole life. So the guy comes and say, oh, I'm a surgeon. I'm making this much money. My life is this. And then the sister says, hold on a second. You went to residency. I'm also a doctor. I'm also a physician. I'm also as good as you on paper. But we didn't teach them your value lies in actually being a follower of Ali Muhammad. That's where your value lies. That's all secondary. Because otherwise we're going to give rise to a generation that prioritizes their economic and their secular achievements over their religious achievements. What else is going to happen? We need you to tell, first and foremost, be a good human being. I'm going to be brutally honest with you, and I mentioned this key to secrets, not my words, Ray Dalio. I can give you secular and religious scholars, one after the other. Be honest with yourself if you want to improve. We tell our youth and our children from lips, religion and Islam is the most important thing. But through our actions, we show them otherwise. What's the priority? But believe me, if you are a follower of Bab Madinatul Ilm, you will be first in your academics. You will develop society. You will get all of those other things. Unfortunately, we have not shown the side of development that the Ahlul Bayt had. You don't think that if Imam Ali and Ahlul Bayt and Rasulullah were in this time, they wouldn't be leading the top institutions in the world? The top institution would be coming to them to get answers. But somehow we think there's two different worlds. Family, number one, always interact with your spouse, husband to wife, wife to husband, with love and compassion and generosity. Remember, these basic things. Unfortunately, many times we don't know the basics. A fundamental human need is respect. A man wants to be respected. A woman wants to be respected. A human being wants to be respected. So the language that you use to speak to someone, speak with respect. Number one. Number two, know the other person's affection, their language of love or their language of affection. Dr. Chapman, for those of you who know. He says not everyone has the same language of affection. You know, you go to the petrol pump, you go to the gas station, there's different grades. There's 87, 89, 91, 93, different cars require different forms of fuel. He said similarly, people have different requirements. Some people, they want to be appreciated through words. Some people want to be appreciated through a touch on the shoulder, on the back. Some people want time. They want to sit and they want to have time with you. Some people want gifts, maybe small gifts. Other people have different things. I remember Dr. Chapman said, I had a client who came into my office. She was saying that I keep telling my husband, fix the fan, fix the fan, fix the fan. He doesn't fix the fan. Dr. Chapman asked a few more questions. He said, hold on. I now understand what your husband's type is. Go home now, and for the next 3 weeks, don't mention the fan at all. I just want you to do this. If you notice something that he does that you genuinely, sincerely appreciate it. Maybe he takes out the trash, maybe he looks after the children, maybe he does something small, you genuinely appreciate it, tell him. I said, okay. So she went back for the next few weeks that she did exactly as Dr. Chapman said. 3 weeks later, she comes back. She sits in Dr. Chapman's office. Dr. Chapman said, what happened? He fixed the fan. So what? He said, you see, you are not on the same wavelength as him. You said that if you order him to do it or you do this, he'll do it. But that's not how he is appreciated. Human beings have a need of respect. They have a need of being appreciated, young and old alike. So he said you need to understand, and the same way for the sister, the husband should appreciate the sister based on her need. You know, often we mention that Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, Forgive me, I'll take a few more moments. Forgive me for this. This is very important. This is the future of our next generation. Forgive me. Imam Baqir alayhi salam, we have this tradition where we've often heard that when you are angry, if you're standing, sit down. And if you're sitting, lay down. You may have heard this. But this tradition continues. It says that if you are angry with a loved one, touch them on the shoulder or on the hand. Obviously, after they calm down. Don't do it while they're upset. It could become bad. But when they calm down, touch them. That has an impact on them. The same thing. Some people require a touch, number one. Number two, some people require a appreciation through words. Imam Al-Kadhim says, when you appreciate someone, when you like someone, when you love someone, a brother, for example, one of your friends, or for example, if you have a loved one, a family member, when you appreciate them, tell them you appreciate them, because it brings the hearts closer. We sometimes have not mentioned this. Rasulullah says, when a man says to his wife, I love you, it never leaves her heart. This is not Hollywood or Bollywood saying this. This is Rasulullah saying this. Somehow we haven't explained what Islam is in its truest sense. At the third level, some people require actions to show appreciation. Imam Hassan alayhi salam is in the masjid in i'tiqaf. You know, in the masjid in i'tiqaf, you're not supposed to leave the masjid. Imam is sitting in the masjid. A man comes to the Imam. He says, Yabna Rasulillah, I have a loan. I need to pay somebody their money back. He says, very well. He says, Yabna Rasul, I don't have the money. Imam Hassan, he was very wealthy, but he said, hold on a second. I don't have the money at this moment. You know, at that time, you know, Imam Husain alayhi salam, he bought the land of Karbala and he waqfed it to the people. You know this, right? But Imam Husain, before he left for Karbala, he took out a loan. And when Imam Sajjad came back to Medina, he paid back that loan. One of the first things. But you may ask, if Imam Husain had so much money, why did he take out a loan? If you know finance, you know there's something called liquidity in assets. Stocks you can buy and sell every day on the stock market. But if you have real estate, it takes time to find a buyer and seller. You must be seeing this. So liquidity in assets, so he'd have to take a loan out, and he paid that back as soon as he got back. Similarly, Imam Hassan was asked by this person, can you help me with my loan? He says, I don't have the money right now. He says, then very well, Yabna Rasulillah, I know you're an i'tiqaf, but maybe you could say something to the person I owe money to, and if you say this to him, then he will give me some more time. As soon as the man said this, Imam Hassan got up and he went towards the door, towards the shoes. At that point in time, the people looked at Imam Hassan. They said, Yabna Rasulillah, you are leaving i'tiqaf in this state to go help this person? He says, I have heard from my father who heard from Rasulullah that the one who helps a believer in need does more than 1,000 nights of ibadah and worship. So we have not explained. We sometimes think that worship and ibadah is limited to simply an environment where we're just doing sujood, and that's also true. But there's other forms of ibadah that you and I need to be very cognizant of, mindful. One of the next levels, Dr. Chapman says, is time. And this is perhaps the most difficult thing today. To give time to your children, to your family. Do you know what the number one regret that people have on their deathbed is? The number one regret that people have on their deathbed in America is, I wish I spent more time with my family. It's not, I wish I made more money, I wish I made more money. I wish I spent more time with my family, my youth especially. Imagine that your parents are 70 years old, imagine. And you go off to university or you go off to get a job on the other side of town. And you come back once a year on Christmas holiday, on winter break, and you see your parents. How long do you think your parents have to live? You know, mashallah, in our community, sometimes parents hit 60 and they're like, my life's over. MashaAllah. You have not been reading modern medicine. Work out a little bit more, eat a little bit less sugar, less oil, run a little bit. You can live to 100, inshallah. Nonetheless, they say our life's over. But whatever. Imagine they're 70 and let's say they live up to 80. If you come back once a year, how many times do you see your parents? 10 times left in your life? In your whole life? Prioritize family. One of the reasons people feel depression, loneliness in America over the last 50 years has doubled, 100% increase. People feel extremely lonely. You go off to university, you feel alone. You go to another city, you feel alone. After the age of 30 in America, it's extremely difficult to make new friends. You don't think that's going to have an impact on somebody? Be very mindful. The family structure. Make sure, the final thing with family, make sure you communicate in a style that is non-violent communication. Non-violent communication. Imagine the wife comes home, for example, after a long day, and the husband's at home. You know, mashallah, with Zoom, a lot of people are home right now. Unfortunately, sometimes both people are at home, and if they're not on good terms, it's like a pressure cooker. It's not good. Maybe get some fresh air, walk somewhere, get out the house sometimes. But imagine you're at work, the husband's sitting at home, and the wife comes home. When she comes home, the husband has some frustration, maybe he had a bad meeting, he takes out everything on the wife. You always do this, and you always do that, and you always do this. Make sure the way that you communicate is effective and it's non-violent. How do you do non-violent communication? If you have a problem, for example, if someone leaves the shoes somewhere, for example, you don't say, you always do this and you always do that. You start by saying this: I feel, number one, I feel sad, or I don't feel happy, or I feel in a particular way when you leave the shoes out. Can you please not do this in the future? We sometimes have not taught our children how to speak, so that child has learned behavior. So if they see the father always yelling and shouting, they start doing the same thing when they become older. They start yelling and shouting because that's how you get things done. That's what they've learned, that's what they've seen. You see, we are the ones who are the followers of those people who gave us dua makarimul akhlaq. You know, there's two types of akhlaq: makarimul akhlaq and mahasinul akhlaq. Mahasinul akhlaq is that akhlaq, if you do something to me and you give me a gift, I give you a gift back. But if you don't do something nice to me, we just carry on as normal. Makarimul akhlaq is whether you do something good to me or bad to me, I treat you well and with respect. That is how the Ahlul Bayt operated. The Ahlul Bayt are those. So the foundational layer is the family. Then is the madrasa. Please do not treat madrasa like a second-class citizen as it is done everywhere in our world, because that has an impact. Some people ask me, what did you do? I'm nothing here. But people often ask. My parents, they prioritize certain things. When we were growing up, we used to go to madrasa 3 times a week, 4 hours. And it was intense. But that helped us at some level. Other people went in other times. Whatever you prioritize, you reap what you sow. That's what ends up happening in our world, in our society. Prioritize madrasa. 3rd level, mimbar. The mimbar has to address the Quran, the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, the fadail of the Ahlul Bayt, and also needs to address the problems of what we're facing in our world, in our zaman and makan. And how can we address those? The final level is company. My young and old brothers alike. Make sure the company that you keep is very important. Be good friends and keep good friends. I have sometimes seen the hard work of good communities, of good families, of good madrasa, of good member go down the drain because of poor friend selection, for poor company that you keep. That is, they led them down the wrong path. Be very careful of it. Outside these walls, we need people to get together and focus on finance, entrepreneurship. Why? Because that funds media, and that funds our political civic engagement. We have many things that we need to do in this part of the world that if we're not doing them, who's going to do them? Do you know that in the media today, there's something called internalized racism? Do you know what internalized racism is? If I see on the TV all the time that Muslims are this and Muslims are that, as we commemorate the anniversary of 9/11, do you know life has changed completely? I remember life before 9/11 in America. Some of you may remember life before 9/11. Muslims were under the radar. But after 9/11, the whole dynamic shifted. So when a young person sees this is how Muslims are propagated, it causes them to internalize the racism and discrimination. They start believing. Do you know that a Muslim woman on television or in the movies or in TV shows is 6 times, 6-fold, 600%, 6 times more likely to be shown as a victim of abuse? So people look at that and they're like, oh, Muslim women are being treated like this? They internalize that. Do not give fuel to those fires. So we need to be speaking for ourselves. You know, some people want to go to Hawza. Very well for them. But there's also another need. You know, the Jewish community, 100 years ago, they said that everyone who's teaching Judaism in the universities in America, they're all non-Jews. There were about 55 seats at that time. Today, fast forward, they said all of them we want to be taught by Jewish professors teaching it. Now, 54 seats are held by Jewish professors, one of them is non. Similarly, Muslims, Islam in America is being taught by who? It's being taught by people who are not Muslim, majority. There's very few Muslim professors. So what narrative is that going to have? Be very careful and cognizant. We have a lot of things to do on the community building front. But first and foremost, remember this: human capital development. Remember, the Jewish community that came to America, when they came to America in the 1850s, the second generation built huge synagogues. And they had a saying afterwards when they built these huge synagogues. I've seen some of these in Carolinas, in Florida, in California, and other parts of America, in New York. They brought in doors and walls from the Middle East that were ancient and very expensive. But after they built them, they said, these synagogues are heavy on sweat and light on tears. Meaning what? We put so much resources in building these, but there's no one here crying and worshiping on the Sabbath. Believe me, with my hand on my heart, the Muslim community is doing the exactly same thing right now. From coast to coast. I've seen this in England, I've seen this in coast to coast of America. Building infrastructure is not bad and not wrong, but alongside physical infrastructure, you need spiritual infrastructure. That is the spirituality of the heart. Otherwise, no one is going to be in that mosque in 15 years. Focus on human resource, human capital development, the Singaporean model. Develop each youth, protect them. And one of my brothers shared something beautiful with me that I want to share with you. If you want to solve someone's problem, don't tell them do this, do that, do the other. You ask them, how can I help you? Go and ask a young person, how can I help you? What do you need? Build a relationship. Until and unless we realize that each child in this community is like my own child, we will not progress. You would never do ghibat about your own child in front of others. Why do that about someone else? Believe me, in my travels, when I mentioned the rate of suicide, recently, not very long ago, I went to the community. When I went to the community, after the lecture, a brother came to me. Final thing, and then we'll go to Masaib. I came, and the brother came to me, Sayyid, thank you so much for sharing this. Do you know what? My brother attempted suicide 4 times. I never heard about it from the mimbar. But that didn't hurt as much as the gossip that I had to hear from the community. Do you know they would say about my parents were not good parents? Do you know they would say, for example, my parents, they had done some guna or some masiyah and they were getting repaid for it in this way? Do you know they were saying this and that about my parents? The suicide attempt didn't impact as much as how much people are gossiping. Imam Ali in letter 31 of Nahjul Balagha, he says to his son Imam Hassan, he says, my son, do not speak until you have to speak. Don't speak. Do you know Imam Ali said, Malik al-Ashtar, Malik is to me like I was to Rasulullah. Do you know what Imam Ali said in the bab of the fadail of Malik al-Ashtar? He said, Malik does not speak unless he has to. That's his fadilah. Do you know that during the time of Rasulullah, companions used to fill their mouths with stones? They used to fill their mouth with stones. Why? Because they didn't speak. Why didn't they speak? Because they said, we heard from Rasulullah that the amount of guna and masiyah that someone can do with their tongue is enough to get them into Jahannam. Be respectful of people. Imagine you are dealing with your sibling going through suicide, your child going through suicide attempts, and you have to deal with that. And on top of that, you have to deal with people talking about you. We should be supporting people. We should be helping them in their most difficult times. I've already told you our children are they're prone to difficult. It's not easy being a Muslim today. Help and encourage each other. We leave the rest for the next time. Today we turn our hearts to Karbala. We're told there's a moment in time in Medina after Karbala, Imam Sajjad was in a gathering. When Imam Sajjad was in a gathering, according to the narrations, a young boy came into the gathering. When the young boy came into the gathering at that point in time, when he entered, Imam Sajjad stood up. Imam Sajjad stood up. When Imam Sajjad stood up, everyone looked at Imam Sajjad. They said, who's this young boy? This is not Imam Baqir. They knew Imam Baqir. Why did he stand up? At that point in time, they said, Yabna Rasulullah, why are you standing up for this young boy? He says, how can I not stand up for this young boy? This is the son of my uncle Abul Fadl Abbas. This is Fudayl ibn Abbas. Abbas helped us in every single moment. Abbas is that individual who never left Ali Muhammad. He helped till his last breath. Abbas, and according to narrations, Abul Fadl al-Abbas's lineage helped in every single time. The narrations say, whenever the zikr of the Masaib of Abul Fadl al-Abbas takes place, Imam Zamana is in the gathering. Why? Because the narrations say, when Imam Askari was in his last moments, our 11th Imam, the wife of Imam Askari asked, who will look after us? Who will support us in this time? The Imam says that in this town, in this neighborhood, in Samarra, go to this house. When you go to this house, lives the descendant of our uncle Abul Fadl al-Abbas. He will help you. In every time the lineage of Abbas was helping the Ahlul Bayt. At that point in time, Imam Sajjad said, Abbas was everywhere for us. He was always there. The narrations say that Abul Fadl al-Abbas Abbas is that individual who is Babul Hawa'ij. The narrations say when Abbas comes on the day of judgment, on the day of Qiyamah, there will be a situation where where Hazrat Abbas comes, as the people of Iraq call him Imam Abbas. When he comes, the people, the Anbiya, the prophets will do ghibta. They will do a positive envy, and they will say, who is this person who's coming in this honor and dignity? And they'll say, this is Abul Fadl al-Abbas. But there's another moment, according to the narrations, that there will be a cry on the day of judgment, Ya ahla mahshar ghuddu absarakum. O people of the court of the day of judgment, lower your gaze. Why? Because of Fatima enters into the court. When Fatima Az-Zahra enters, the narrations say Fatima Az-Zahra will have two items with her. When she enters, at that point in time, she will come forward and she will have a cloth and she will say, this is the cloth of my son Husain ibn Ali, the blood-riddled cloth of Husain ibn Ali. And in the other narration, in the other hand, she will say that this is Hada kafatani al-waladi al-Abbas. These are the hands of my son Abul Fadl al-Abbas. Ajrukum ala Allah, ajrukum ala Allah. The narrations say, and I will not take much of your time. The narrations say that when the news reached Medina, they say on the 1st of Safar, when the Wali of Medina, when they cried out and they said that this news has happened and come from Karbala. قُتِلَ الْحُسَيْنُ بِكَرْبَلَا. At that point in time, a lady comes and she pierces through the crowd. When she pierces through the crowd, there comes a moment in time, she goes to the messenger and she says, oh messenger, what did you say? He looked and he saw who it was. He looked at the lady and he said, may Allah reward you for your son Abul Fadl al-Abbas. She looked back and said, I didn't ask you about Abul Fadl al-Abbas. Tell me about my son Husain. He said that they killed your Husain. Ajrukum ala Allah, ajrukum ala Allah. The narrations say there's a moment in time, Marwan, when he was exiled, when they pushed him out of Medina, there was a revolt. After Karbala, there was Waqat al-Harra. The people of Medina began to revolt. Then Yazid sent people to crush them. But when there was a revolt, Marwan was kicked out. Marwan is that person who was the person who said to cut off the head of Husain. When he was that individual who said that if Husain leaves you on the 20th of Rajab, when Husain, if he leaves you, you will never be able to get bay'ah from him. That individual, Imam Sajjad gave him amnesty and gave him a safe haven when nobody was giving him a safe haven. This same Marwan, he says, when he was pushed out of town, he was going towards Jannatul Baqi. When he was going towards Jannatul Baqi, he saw there was a lady who was fallen onto a grave. When he saw a lady who was fallen onto the grave, he asked his servant, who is this lady? He says, you don't know? This is Baneen, the mother of Abul Fadl al-Abbas. So why is she here? She comes every day and she cries over her children and she cries over Husain ibn Ali. At that point in time, we are told that someone came to Baneen and he said, Baneen, may Allah reward you for your son Abbas. She said, my Abbas, what happened? You didn't know my Abbas. How could someone kill my Abul Fadl al-Abbas? Do you know Sayyid Mahdi Bahrul Ulum? He was the Marja Azam 300 years ago. 300 years ago, Sayyid Mahdi Bahrul Ulum, he took some people and they went into the grave of Abul Fadl Abbas under the Dhari. When they went underground, they went and they saw the grave of Abul Fadl Abbas. When they saw the grave of Abul Fadl Abbas, they said, they began to speak amongst themselves. They said, Sayyid Mahdi, we have heard something, we have a question for you. He said, what's the question? He said, we heard Abul Fadl Abbas was very tall. He said, yes. He says, then why is his grave so small? Sayyid Mahdi began to beat himself. He began to cry. He said, Abul Fadl Abbas was very tall, but the enemy cut his body into so many pieces. This is all that we have left of Abul Fadl Abbas. Ajrukum ala Allah. The final narration, Baneen was asked, just tell me one thing, what happened to my son Abul Fadl al-Abbas? They said, Baneen, Abbas was bringing the water back from the tents. When he was bringing the water back from the tents, he had the water in his right hand. They cut his right hand. He put it into his left hand. When he put in the left hand, they cut his left hand. And then he put the mashk into his mouth and they shot an arrow towards the mashk. They pierced the mashk. Baneen, they shot an arrow in his eye. Baneen asks, just tell me one thing. My son did not have any hands. How did he fall towards the ground? What hit the ground first? Did his chest hit the ground first? Did his face hit the ground first? Baneen, I will tell you what hit the ground first. It was not the chest of Abbas. It was not the face of Abbas. What hit the ground first was the arrow in the I am Abul Fadl al-Abbas, the arrow. Sallallahu alayka ya Rasulullah. Sallallahu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'minin. Sallallahu alayki ya Fatima Az-Zahra, Sayyidat al-Nisa al-Alamin. Sallallahu alayka ya Hasan al-Mujtaba. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين، خصوصا سيدي ومولاي أبو الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين. معتم يا حسين يا حسين يا حسين.
زلزلے آئیں گے جس وقت زمین کو پہ ہم، چادریں چھین کے لے جائیں جو بانی یہ ستم، اور بلوے میں تماشائی بنے نا محرم، اور بلوے میں تماشائی بنے نا محرم، اپنے بالوں ہی سے منہ اپنا چھپانا زینب، بیردا شام کے دربار میں جانا زینب، بیردا شام کے دربار میں جانا زینب، بیردا شام کے دربار میں جانا زینب، میری نادان سکینہ کو نہ رونے دینا، بعد میرے کوئی تکلیف نہ ہونے دینا، گرم ریتی پا کبھی اس کو نہ سونے دینا، گرم ریتی پا کبھی اس کو نہ سونے دینا، اپنے سینے پہ سکینہ کو سلانا زینب، بیردا شام کے دربار میں جانا زینب، بیردا شام کے دربار میں جا، گھرکیا میری سکینہ کو جو دیش مرے لئی، سیلیاں مارنے آئے جو اسے وہ بے دی، خوف کے مارے نکل جا اے نہ جنگل میں کہیں، خوف کے مارے نکل جا اے نہ جنگل میں کہیں، اپنی آغوش میں تم اس کو چھپانا زینب، بیردا شام کے دربار میں جانا زینب، بیردا شام کے دربار یہ لٹا کارواں جس وقت مدینہ پہنچے آ کے جو دکھ تر بیمار پدر کو پوچھے اور بے شیر کو جس وقت وہ دکھیا ڈھونڈے اور بے شیر کو جس وقت وہ دکھیا ڈھونڈے میری صغرا کو کلیجے سے لگانا زینب میری داشام کے دربار میں جانا زینب میری داشام کے دربار قافلہ اہل حرم کا جو مدینہ جائے اور اسنا سفر میں میرا مقتل آئے تم کو فرقات جو گھڑی بھر کے لیے مل جائے تم کو فرصت جو گھڑی بھر کے لیے مل جائے چند آنسو میری تربت بہانا زینب میری داشام کے دربار میں جانا زینب میری داشام کے دربار میں جانا کربلا میں جو میرے گھر پہ مصیبت گزری اور بازاروں میں تم پر جو اذیت گزری مختصر یہ ہے کہ جو کچھ بھی قیامت گزری مختصر یہ ہے کہ جو کچھ بھی قیامت گزری ساری روداد میری ماں کو سنانا زینب میری داشام کے دربار میں جانا زینب میری داشام کے دربار میں جانا زینب یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین
ضیاء بھائی کا پرانا نوحہ ہے اس پہ ماتم بس بند کے آخر میں ہی ہے تھوڑا سا سننے کا ہے تو دمشق میں جو غریبوں کا قافلہ پہنچا یزید نحس نے دربار میں بلا بھیجا ارے بہن سے شہ کی شہادت کا واقعہ پوچھا اور تڑپ کے بنت علی نے یزید سے یہ کہا زمیں کی گود میں اسلام کا ستارہ ہے میرے غریب کو لاکھوں نے مل کے مارا ہے میرے غریب کو لاکھوں نے مل کے مارا آئے حسین پیاسے حسین آئے حسین کہا یزید نے زینب کہا یزید سے زینب نے ستم مارا ارے غضب کیا تیرے لشکر نے روز عاشورا، میرے حسین کو جنگل میں گھیر کر مارا، اور علی کا کر دیا برباد گھر کا گھر سارا، جو بے کفن ہے ابھی تک نبی کا پیارا ہے، میرے غریب کو لاکھوں نے مل کے مارا ہے، میرے غریب کو لاکھوں نے مل کے مارا، ہائے حسین پیاسے حسین، ہائے حسین سہاگ اجڑا کسی کا کسی کی کوکھ جلی، کسی کا جل گیا دامن ردا، کسی کی چھنی، کسی کی مانگ میں کرب و بلا کی خاک پڑی، کسی کی مانگ میں کرب و بلا کی خاک پڑی، اور نبی کی آل ہے زنداں میں یا علی مددی، جہاں میں زینب دلگیر بے سہارا ہے، میرے غریب کو لاکھوں نے مل کے مارا ہے، میرے غریب کو لاکھوں نے مل کے مارا ہے، آئے حسین پیاسے حسین، آئے حسین یہ رنج و غم ستم و جور اور جفا کب تک، یہ رنج و غم ستم و جور اور جفا کب تک، ارے رسول زادیاں بلوے میں بے ردا کب تک، رسول زادیاں بلوے میں بے ردا کب تک، ارے رہے گی قید میں اولاد مرتضیٰ کب تک، اور نبی کی آل پہ یہ ظلم ناروا کب تک، مجھے تو موت ہی عالم میں اب گوارا ہے، میرے غریب کو لاکھوں نے مل کے مارا ہے، میرے غریب کو لاکھوں نے مل کے مارا، آئے حسین پیاسے حسین، آئے حسین پیاسے حسین، آئے حسین پیاسے حسین، آئے حسین پیاسے حسین، قبلہ نے مولا کی شہادت پڑھی، میں صرف ایک شعر پڑھوں گا، نوا پڑھیں گے عامر، مولا عباس علمدار علیہ السلام کی، تو یہ میں ابھی تھوڑی دیر پہلے 4 سطریں مخالف سمت میں پہلے ہے باغ موڑ دی، مولا عباس علمدار کی آپ کی نظر کرنا چاہتا ہوں 4 سطریں، شاید اسی لیے مولا نے یہ عطا فرمائی، مخالف سمت میں پہلے ہے باغ موڑ دی، غازی نے منہ کے بل پھر زین چھوڑ دی، غازی نے منہ کے بل پھر زین چھوڑ دی، اور دیوانہ وار ٹیلے پہ چلائے ہیں حسین، دیوانہ وار ٹیلے پہ چلائے ہیں حسین، ہائے مجھ غریب کی کمر تو نے توڑ دی، ہائے مجھ غریب کی کمر تو نے توڑ دی، ہائے حسین شاہ حسین۔ وہی پڑھ لکھا ہوا نہیں ہے میرے پاس۔ کھلا ہے سر ہے میرے غازی علمدار، ڈالا کے اڑا دے، کھلا ہے سر بازار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، اے میرے غازی علمدار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، کھلا ہے سر کھلا ہے سر اے میرے غازی علمدار، ڈالا کے اڑا دے، کھلا ہے سر بازار، کھلا ہے سر کبھی جو گھر سے نکلتی میں سال میں ایک بار، تو پڑھ کے لوگوں سے کہتا تھا بند کرو بازار، وہی بہن وہی بازار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، اے میرے غازی علمدار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، کھلا ہے سر کھلا ہے لا کے اڑا دے، کھلا ہے سر کبھی جو گھر سے نکلتی میں سال میں ایک بار، تو پڑھ کے لوگوں سے کہتا تھا بند کرو بازار، وہی بہن وہی بازار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، اے میرے غازی علمدار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، کھلا ہے سر بازار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، کھلا ہے سر بازار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، کھلا ہے سر بازار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، یہ بوتراب کی بیٹی ہو کیوں نہ فریادی، اگر وہ توق و سلاسل سے پائے آزادی، وہ میرا عابد بیمار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، اے میرے غازی علمدار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، کھلا ہے سر بازار، ردالا کے اڑا دے، کھلا ہے سر بازار، دے کھلا ہے سر مجھے چھپا لے میرے غازی ان نگاہوں سے سبیل ایسی بنا کوئی طے ہو یہ رستے نہ دیکھے مجھ کو ستمگار رضا لا کے اڑا دے اے میرے غازی علمدار رضا لا کے اڑا دے کھلا ہے سر بازار رضا لا کے اڑا دے کھلا کھلا ہے سر بازار غریب ہو گئی امت نے دی سزا مجھ کو تو دیکھ سکتا نہیں غازی بے ردا مجھ کو سینہ سے گر نہیں ہر بار رضا لا کے اڑا دے اے میرے غازی علمدار رضا لا کے اڑا دے کھلا ہے سر بازار رضا لا کے اڑا دے کھلا لاسٹ رضا لا کے اڑا دے کھلا سر مجھے چھپا لے میرے غازی ان نگاہوں سے سبیل ایسی بنا کوئی طے ہو یہ رستے نہ دیکھے مجھ کو ستمگار رضا لا کے اڑا وہ عابد بیمار تھا وہ بیمار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا چلنے سے جو لاچار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور شام کا بازار تھا اور مصطفیٰ کی بیٹیاں مولا امام یا حسن یا حسین مولا امام یا حسن یا حسین شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی شبیر کی وہ لاڈلی سینے پہ جو شہ کی پلی سینے پہ جو شہ کی پلی جس کی عبارن میں جلی جس کی عبارن میں جلی کا کمال چونکہ نشان مولا امام یا حسن یا حسین 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 یا
السلام علیکم یا ابا عبداللہ السلام علیکم یا ابن رسول اللہ السلام علیکم یا ابن امیر المومنین و ابن سید الوسیین السلام علیکم یا ابن فاطمة الزہرا سیدۃ النساء العالمین السلام علیکم سائر شہداء کربلا خصوصاً سیدی و مولاي یا ابا الفضل العباس یا ابن امیر المومنین السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ السلام علیکم یا غریب الغرباء السلام علیکم یا معین الضعفاء والفقراء السلام علیکم یا سلطان یا ابا الحسن یا علی ابن موسیٰ ایھا الرضا السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ السلام علیکم یا صاحب العصر والزمان السلام علیکم یا شریک القرآن السلام علیکم یا امام الانس والجان عجل اللہ تعالی فرجک وسال اللہ تعالی مخرجک وظہورک السلام علیکم وعلی آبائک الطیبین الطاہرین السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. اللہم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم.